Why hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today I'm bringing you a guide to using the Springcore aesthetic in Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'll be covering everything from what Springcore actually is to colours, furniture, villagers and everything you could need to make a Springcore paradise on your island this season. If you enjoyed this video, I suggest checking out my channel and perhaps subscribing, as throughout the coming months I'll be posting lots of speed builds and design inspiration videos using this core on my own island. But I do want to say here that I categorically do not think you need to have an island which perfectly aligns with a core and which is super aesthetic. I personally have always kind of used a blend of cores on my island, and half of my island is in complete shambles anyway. I just wanted to bring this up because I think sometimes Animal Crossing players, myself included, can get very bogged down with all the little details when it comes to decorating their islands. So this video is acting definitely more as a guide to this aesthetic and not a strict, rigid set of instructions. As Leaf said, you've got to do what makes you happy. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. So detaching this aesthetic from Animal Crossing for a second, as the name suggests, Springcore obviously focuses around the season of spring, and lots of the themes and motifs often associated with this time of year, including new life and particularly centering around nature, which is why flowers and baby animals are commonly seen in Springcore. When I searched Springcore aesthetic in Google Images, other than a lot of pictures of Animal Crossing builds, I saw a good few pictures of women with long flowing hair and loose fitting but very effortlessly elegant tops and dresses, lots of pictures of washing lines and picnic areas, those are very common themes, and of course just lots of flowers everywhere. So bringing all of this back to Animal Crossing, I'd say that Springcore usually is characterized by very natural colors like greens, yellows and whites, with any pops of color remaining fairly muted. And with this being said, I'd say that for Springcore, using nature as decoration is pretty much the cheat code for nailing this aesthetic. So using lots of weeds and flowers, and on screen here I've popped up a little arrangement of flowers which I've personally been using. Also lots of trees and shrubs, and generally anything which looks remotely naturey is going to be the way going forward. Some furniture sets which I see being used in Springcore Islands quite a lot are the natural wood and the log sets, which is very handy as these items are usually quite easy to come across close to the start of the game, and if you choose to go with white and yellow flowers, these can also be bought directly from Nook's Cranny, so this actually makes Springcore a really good aesthetic to go for if maybe you've just restarted your island or if you're just booting up the game for the first time. In terms of other furniture sets you could incorporate into a Springcore island, although you don't get these ones until around the autumn time, I'd recommend using most of the items from the Mush set as well as some of the items from the Spooky set, but coloured in the green, yellow and white variants, and also using plenty of bug models, especially the butterfly ones, and even the ranch set which came with the 2.0 update, and also the turkey day items coloured in the light green spring variants would be great too. I think both of these sets in particular really fit with the rustic vibes which I got from many of the reference images I came across, which leads me to think that there could definitely be some overlap between Springcore and Farmcore as well as Cottagecore. But what I would say differentiates Springcore from Cottagecore in particular is the colours of furniture used, because while there is definitely a good amount of overlap in the items used between both cores, I'd say that Springcore favours more of the lighter colour variations, which includes either white or the blonde tones of wood. However, I would say that similar to Cottagecore, using a lot of clutter is also kind of going to be the way to go with Springcore, but I'd say lean quite heavily on using the nature items again, so things like sticks and the mushrooms, as well as lots of the smaller items like the log stools and the stone stools and stuff like that. Next, let's think about villagers which you might want to include on a Springcore island. I'd say that having the quote-unquote perfect or most aesthetic villagers is never a must in this game. I have personally gone for a mix of villagers who I have an attachment to, as well as some new ones who I just think are super cute, but I have by no means matched my villager selection to my core. So the choice is yours. You might want to pick villagers who are cute but also have house exteriors which go with Springcore. I'm going to give you guys a few suggestions for villagers which in my opinion fit both of these categories, and these include Bianca, Chevre, Cookie, Daisy, Dom, Fang, Felicity, Melba, Punchy, Rosie, Sky, Tammy and Tipper. But again, these are only suggestions. If you've fallen in love with a villager, I'd say it's never worth sacrificing that element of attachment and fondness that you have towards a villager just so you can have the perfectly aesthetic island. But anyway, now we've got our villagers and we've gathered our building materials, let's talk about some areas which you could add to your island which would work perfectly with Springcore. As I mentioned earlier, two reoccurring motifs which I noticed when looking at reference images were picnic blankets and washing lines. Picnic areas work really well for both more public areas on your island, like parks for example, but if you like to also give your villagers their own gardens, then they work really well in those kinds of settings too, while washing areas, I guess as you could call them, definitely fit best in my opinion near a villager's home. But with this being said, I've also seen some amazing build spaces like these where players like to place the kind of washing areas on the rock peninsulas and beaches. I've actually had this weird kind of cliff area behind one of my villager neighborhoods on my island, and so you're going to be seeing the clips here, but I decided to decorate that area with a kind of hybrid washing area and picnic area just to kind of demonstrate using some of these items in this core. However, builds like these can obviously get a little bit repetitive, so I'd also suggest maybe incorporating some market stalls selling produce, some small overgrown farms, and maybe also greenhouses displaying lots of flowers. If you have a Nintendo Switch Online, I definitely recommend making these spaces feel more differentiated by grabbing a few different custom design codes for picnic blankets, which could also be used to cover wooden stools for example. And if you don't have Switch Online, there will definitely be plenty of tutorials out on the internet explaining how to make these kinds of designs for yourself. Custom designs in general are of course a great way to spice up an area. In addition to a few different picnic blanket / fabric designs, I also use a good few other small designs to fill in areas on the ground for example, like rock patterns, and for Springcore in particular, kind of little like flower spots, or one pattern I've used in particular for ages is this kind of little mud spot on the ground which has been made to match the path. These custom designs are also great for stopping flowers and weeds spreading out of control too. I'll have all the codes which I mentioned in the description down below, but I'd also suggest checking out my Pinterest because I have a giant board over there with well over 1,000 build inspiration pictures and custom design codes saved to it. But anyway, the main way I use custom designs is definitely in the paving department. If you have watched any of my other videos before, you'll probably know that I am a self-proclaimed slag for Colin Crossing, and I think that he has some amazing paths for any people wanting to be using Springcore on their island. The main one I'm using, because I am going for a mix of Springcore and TOWNCORE, is this basic all-year light concrete path. I love how neutral it is, and alongside it I've been using this, I guess you could call it a mud textured path, which is a set of 9 designs and is basically another version of the path which I mentioned earlier. And speaking of the path, I'm also using this on my island, and I think this would be another great one for this core too. The Colin Crossing mud path I think would be great to layer on top of the light ground path which comes in the game. I know a lot of players do this technique with grass or mossy paths too, and I'll definitely be experimenting with this in the future for sure. I did, just for the purpose of this video, again head over to Pinterest and I found a great grassy path which I really like the look of actually, and again maybe I'll be playing around with it more in the future. And on that note, I do believe that that is everything I have for you guys today. I would love to know if you will be using Springcore on your island, and if so, I really hope this video was helpful. Otherwise, if you have any thoughts, questions or suggestions, please leave them down below because I'd love to hear from you. I hope you guys are having a great day and I'll see you again soon.